A few weeks later, things between us had gotten a lot more serious. We weren't just going on dates, hitting parties, and hanging at the beach anymore. We were spending almost every day together. One night, my mom called and said, "Why don't you invite that boy over for dinner sometime? I'd love to meet him." I told her we could just go out to a restaurant, but she insisted we come to the house. When I asked Ethan, he didn't even hesitate. He just asked when. I told him the weekend, but he said Thursday night would be better. He didn't want to show up tired the first time my mom met him. Thursday night, we pulled up to Claire's house in Beverly Hills. The moment she opened the door and saw Ethan, she gave him a warm smile and said, "So this is the guy I've been hearing so much about." They hit it off right away. The conversation flowed easily. We were sitting at the dinner table. Claire had made Italian food, and the whole house smelled amazing, like fresh basil and baked cheese. For the first few minutes, we kept the conversation light, talking about school, architecture projects, and the house. But slowly, the silences between our words grew longer. Claire gently set her fork down on her plate, then looked at Ethan with a dangerous little smile and said, "So, Ethan, now that I've had 3 glasses of wine and I'm officially not responsible for what comes out of my mouth, be honest with me. Are you actually in love with Lena, or are you just playing around with David's rich daughter?" I nearly choked on my wine. Ethan didn't even blink. He gave her a calm, easy smile and said, "To be honest, until a few weeks ago, I had no idea about her family's situation." Claire laughed, but her eyes stayed serious. She leaned forward a little and lowered her voice. "You know what actually scares me? You're really smooth with words. People who talk that easily, they're usually either incredibly genuine or really dangerous." Ethan looked her straight in the eyes without flinching and replied, "Maybe I'm both, but honestly, from the very first day I sat next to Lena in that cafe, I knew this girl was going to completely mess up my life. I just didn't know how." Claire went quiet for a moment. Then, with a soft but heavy smile, she said, "That's interesting. Because Lena came home that same night and said almost the exact same thing. That this guy doesn't know anything about her, but there's something in his eyes she'd never seen in any other boy before. Like all his attention is on her." She turned to me, her voice suddenly softer but full of weight. "Just promise me, neither of you will mess this up, because some people fall so deep, there's no coming back from it." After dinner, when we got back in the car and pulled out of the driveway, Ethan was quiet for a moment, then said, "Your mom's something else. I felt like she was studying me, but not in a bad way." He paused, then added, "So you probably take after your dad, huh?" I let out a small laugh and shook my head. "Actually, everyone says I look exactly like my mom." I stayed quiet for a second, then said softly, "But there's something you don't know. Claire isn't my real mom. She's my stepmom. My actual mom passed away when I was a kid, and Claire raised me. She and my dad split up about 10 years ago." I picked up my phone, opened the photo of my mom, and handed it to him. "This is her." Ethan stared at the picture for a few seconds in silence. Then he said, "Wow, she really looks just like you. Like an older version of you." A few weeks later, I told Ethan, "I think it's time you meet my dad. What do you think?" Ethan didn't even hesitate. "That sounds great. I'd really like to meet him." So I called my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, are you free one night? I want you to meet Ethan." He was quiet for a second, then said, "How's Thursday at 8:30? I'll make a reservation at Spago." Thursday night, we pulled up to Spago in Beverly Hills. We gave the car to the valet, and the host walked us straight to my dad's table by the window. The moment my dad saw us, he stood up. He was wearing a sharp black suit like always. He hugged me first, then extended his hand to Ethan and said in his,
"You must be Ethan. Nice to finally meet you."
Ethan shook his hand firmly and replied,
"The pleasure's mine, sir."
"Thank you for making time." We all sat down. After we ordered drinks, my dad looked at Ethan and asked,
"So, Ethan, what do you do?"
Ethan answered, "I work and study IT at the same time. I've also got some personal projects I'm hoping to turn into a startup someday." My dad raised an eyebrow.
"A startup? So you're trying to head to Silicon Valley? Google? That kind of thing?"
Ethan smiled and said,
"That's definitely the dream. We'll see what happens. I'm just doing my best for now."
Dad turned to me with a small smirk and said,
"Lena, looks like we're dealing with a genius here. Am I right?"
I laughed. "You're seeing it for yourself." Dad looked back at Ethan, his expression becoming more serious, and said,
"Being smart isn't enough. Thousands of smart kids fail in Silicon Valley every year. What matters is whether you can still stand up when everything falls apart."
Ethan looked him straight in the eyes and replied calmly,
"You're right, sir. But I believe failures show you who you really are, more than success ever could."
Dad stayed quiet for a few seconds, studying him. Then, with a faint smile, he said,
"You're interesting. You're really interesting."
2 weeks later, my dad invited Ethan over for the first time. It was a small gathering, just a few of his old friends. The vibe was pretty relaxed. My dad was standing by the grill, cooking steaks with a whiskey in his hand. That wasn't something I saw very often. After dinner, he came out of the kitchen holding his laptop, looking frustrated.
"This damn thing just died on me. Won't turn back on. Ethan, you mind taking a look at it?"
Ethan took the laptop without hesitation, sat down at the kitchen counter, and started working on it. My dad stood next to him, watching. It took about 10 minutes. Ethan was calm and focused, like he'd done this 100 times before. Finally, the laptop came back on. Ethan turned the screen toward my dad and said,
"It was a driver issue. It's fixed."
My dad stared at the screen for a second, eyebrows raised. Then he suddenly put his hand on Ethan's shoulder and said loudly,
"Kid, you're a goddamn wizard! From tonight on, you're a permanent guest in this house."
Everyone around laughed, but my dad seemed serious. He poured Ethan another whiskey, pulled up a chair right next to him, and started talking like they'd known each other for years. Ethan answered easily, and my dad kept laughing, louder than usual. I stood across the room, just watching them, and for the first time in a long time, I felt really good. Like everything was finally falling into place. It felt warm. It felt safe. But at the same time, something about it felt too perfect. Maybe because it happened so easily. Maybe because my dad wasn't usually this quick to let someone in. Or maybe because Ethan knew exactly what to say and exactly how to act. Either way, that night was the first time I felt like something was happening that I wasn't fully in control of.